Hello and welcome to the Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates. Welcome back. Decided to take the winter break since Christmas. Uh, took a little winter break vacation. I may be taking a summer break vacation, taking off the months of July and August, and means we got 4 months to work and to make some progress. Today is also important because last night I just finished designing this product. If you remember, a couple months ago in on this website, on this YouTube channel, I was talking about how I needed to create a product. The first product that I created was um, an online course, and the online course was basically like the methodology behind how I think about project management and business development. It is the foundation of what I have been teaching students in order for them to be able to use some of the thinking tools in the book Create Crucial Insight. So basically, the as the story goes, I met Tom about 10 years ago, and I think Tom had an idea that somebody would someday make a piece of software from his book. And for me, um, yeah, it was interesting because I was reading his book and it started to make some connections in my brain. And I really needed to have some kind of foundation of thinking about business and project management. You might be thinking, oh, well, why didn't you study PMP, get your project management certificate? Or why didn't you go to university and get an MBA? Or um, I don't know, like there's a lot of different paths you could take. Why didn't you get some kind of coaching certificate from some other certified coaching organization? And I don't know, I just felt really motivated to work on this project. 10 years later, I have some screens. I designed some screens for the process. You might remember that I was talking about this idea between, there's this idea of practical steps. Like what are the skills that you need to have, or the tools that you need in order to do something practically. Like let's look at the example of a mechanic. A mechanic has tools. For example, let's say you have like a bolt and you have to loosen the bolt. That's a skill to be able to apply a tool in order to unscrew something. But then there's the other side, which is which screw are you going to be unscrewing and why are you unscrewing that screw? So you have to have some knowledge and some data about what's wrong with the vehicle and how do you fix that vehicle. So there's these two basic ideas that I've been playing with, which is, you know, universities and different platforms that provide education, they're giving you some ability to understand the context for data. In order to understand one piece of data, you have to understand the pieces of data around that. And then in order to understand those pieces of data, you have to understand those pieces of data around that. So it's interesting to listen to people who have read hundreds or thousands of books, because when they talk, they are presenting information and they have a very rich and diverse set of data to compare those thoughts with. And it's interesting to watch YouTube videos where people are talking about their thoughts and feelings about a variety of topics, especially when you know that those people have a deep and a rich understanding of all of the relevant data and they have read all of the different things that other people have been speaking about that topic. Now, of course, nobody has read everything. So you become a subject matter expert in one small area, and then you don't know how that subject matter compares to other relevant data in some other areas. And it makes it really difficult for one person to understand everything. But over time, you just learn how to compare. For example, like when you want to talk about politics and understand what's going on in the United States, you can ask questions like what is happening in Ukraine? What is happening in Europe? What is happening in Russia? What is happening in China? And you can start to come to some conclusion of it seems that the administration wants to strengthen their balance sheet. And so they want to reduce expenses, particularly, they want to reduce waste, also that they're seeing that the influence that they have in Europe is rather expensive, and also on the other hand, the the intended result of these sanctions against Russia and the aggression in Ukraine was supposed to bankrupt Russia, but then suddenly we're seeing that Russia is actually becoming stronger. So why do you keep fighting when you're not achieving your aims? So there's a lot of confusion there. And then on the other hand, we have this experience that's happening in Gaza, where it seems as though there's a group of lobbyists that have a huge amount of weight about the decision-making capabilities of people in the administration. And so it's like all of these different and conflicting policies. And I started to listen to all different kinds of commentators, and I can't come to heads or tails about what is the right way forward. And I just started thinking about, okay, so what are the principles of government, and what are the values of a nation, and how do you enable your country? For example, I'm from Canada. How do you get the Canadian people to have some kind of vision and some values, and how do we move forward with policies, and how do we become more relevant in the world? Particularly, how do we make our people more successful and make sure that we have a lot of businesses and educational institutions and people who are willing to make sacrifices in order to grow their families, to grow their communities, to grow their cities, and to support the ideologies that can create happy taxpayers. So I just don't know. There's just so many things to learn and so many different people with so many different ideas. And I'm not there yet. I'm not at the point where I can return back to Canada, and I'm not at the point where I can start on that part of my life. I'm still in the last 10 years, and hopefully I'm at the beginning of something new. All right, let's return to the subject of this video and also the subject of um, this new playlist. What I'm thinking is that there's just too much knowledge. And rather than trying to figure out how to find the most applicable knowledge and how to understand everything all at the same time, I decided to focus on the other side. So rather than deciding, like, how does the car work and how do we fix the car, let's just focus on how do we unscrew one bolt. And this brings us back to the topic of project management. So what I've done is I've applied the tools that Tom introduces in his book, Great Crucial Insight, to over 400 people. I've talked to these people for over 4,000 hours. And now I found a series of behaviors that most people go through when they are deciding about what to do in their life, and particularly when they manage projects and when they manage people. And then I tried to simplify it over and over to make it more simple and more simple and more relevant. And then I started applying it with more and more students. And suddenly I found that, yeah, this is what people generally go through when they're making decisions and when they are following up those decisions with action. And finally, I've settled down on one, two, three, four, five, six screenshots. So I have 6 screenshots that represent the things that you can do inside of this piece of software, this software application that I would like to develop. It took 10 years. and now I have designed a product. Now, when you go into these, like when you watch Y Combinator, when you watch these, when you listen to startups and founders and people like this, they ask you, the first question they ask you is, are you using the product yourself? Is this something that you've created, that you understand how it works, and that you love and that you use every day? And I would say to some extent, yes, and to some extent, no. And that's why I'm interested in building this piece of software. And so that I can use it every day. And then as I start using it, then I can start to make some improvements to the piece of software. And eventually, hopefully, I'll be able to find customers who are also happy and excited to use the product. So this is it. And the thing is that I spent the last 10 years learning to communicate with people, finding out what matters most, and trying to figure out how managers manage people and projects. And then I reduce the scope of those behaviors to something that's manageable and something that could be applicable to the widest audience. And like recently, when I started sharing these screenshots, when I started sharing these ideas with students, they're like, oh, well, this already exists in the app like ClickUp, or this already exists in Jira. And it's like, well, okay, so that means I'm onto something, because if you're developing something and it's almost identical to like the software that everybody's already using, then I think that means that you're going the right direction. And so the question is, what makes your piece of software different? Is there some benefit to using your software rather than other people's software? For example, Jira, obviously, you're not going to be using Jira if it's just for personal use. If you're like a teenager or if you're a young adult in university, you're not going to be signing up and paying a Jira subscription. You might be using ClickUp. But then ClickUp, it's like, well, it's mainly for what? What's the benefit of ClickUp? Who is their market, and how do you get benefit from that app? So as we start to develop this app, then that is also one of the key questions is, do you have product market fit? Meaning, is there a segment of the population who is excited to use the product? And of course, hopefully I'm excited to use my own product because, anyways, the next problem is, well, okay, so I've designed it. I know what it looks like. I know how it works. I've tested it to some extent. And now I have to actually turn it into the product. So let's take a look at Rob Shocks. I would say probably Rob Shock has has the best video when it comes to where to get started with AI. Why? It's not just because of his sexy accent, but I don't know. I just got the feeling I've watched around 20 to 30 YouTube videos about what it takes to build something with AI. So, he has a very clear message here: learn, build, and launch with AI. Learn to build AI products, agents, and businesses. Like that's really clear. His statement here. Um, Looks like he used AI to change the color of his shirt because his face is identical in these two pictures. Anyways, the interesting thing about his video is that, let's just pick videos. Now, there are other videos that I think are more helpful for some aspects of getting started and starting to build. What I really liked is this video he has. It's called Master AI Development Without Frustration. You can see stop getting stuck, 3 expert approach, build with AI. I think that this is a ridiculous way of introducing the video, because it's like this makes no sense when you look at it. Let's take a look at his his website. It looks like he built this website with Notion. So I guess Notion, you have the ability to create websites with Notion, because this looks identical to Notion. Anyways, if you go to this thing called AI Dev Project Setup Prompts, and then you scroll down to here, Product Requirements Document. I think this is really interesting because when we talk about what you need in order to do an AI software project, especially if you don't have any coding experience, I think it's important to understand the importance of documentation. Why? Because if you can't document it, if you can't explain it with words, then it's likely that you haven't thought all the way through it. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been working with this prompt and it's really helped. So let's just copy this. Now, I don't want to go too far today. I just want to tell you what's going on and then let's see what we can get. So I've paid for ChatGPT and we have this thing called the O3 Mini High. It says here that the O3 Mini High is great at coding and logic. We're just going to paste his prompt in here. We're going to enable search. Maybe we should enable deep research. I don't know. In his video, he said enable search. So we'll just enable search. All right. Well, it's thinking because eventually it's okay here. So before we proceed with the generating a product requirement document, could you please clarify a few points about your project idea? Project overview. Could you explain your project idea in detail? For example, what problem does it solve and what is its unique value proposition? Target audience. Who is the intended user of the product? Are there specific user demographics or personas you have in mind? Core functionalities. What are the primary features or functions that your product should have? User interactions. How do you envision user interactions with your product? Any specific user flow or scenarios you'd like to highlight? Step-by-step guidance. Would you like an addition to the prompt that includes step-by-step questions and action items to further refine and walk through the product requirement document? And I like this. It'll definitely get you started. The purpose of this is because you're supposed to create a product requirement document, and then you can plug in your product required document into your software AI code developer. So currently, like as of today, Cursor AI is still kind of like the best one. I've recently seen some changes to what's it called? VS Code. Yeah, VS Code. What's it called? Yeah, Virtual Studio Code. So I've seen some changes to Virtual Studio Code, which may enable Virtual Studio Code to claw back to become one of the primary ways that people develop software code. But for right now, it seems that Cursor AI is probably still the best one for people like me who don't understand anything about developing code. Now, today, the only thing I want to talk about really is I just want to show you the idea because even though you might have an idea, so there's basically two paths. If this is your first day developing code, like developing a project, then it's likely that answer these questions. Could you explain your product idea in detail? It's likely you don't know how to answer that question. And it was the same way with me. In fact, I've spent several days chatting back and forth with ChatGPT in order to really explain what the app does. And at the end of the process, what I realized was that I was trying to design something way too complicated. But the experience of talking through it and working with ChatGPT to design every single little tiny feature, it helped me to simplify the process. Now, eventually, let me show you actually one of the last iterations before I finally was able to create the design for the MVP. Now, pay no attention to Nathana Business Growth Engine, because actually, I just used the Mira, uh, which was actually her her Mira. Uh, I just needed something quickly and something I could open easily. All right, so this was the issue. When I started out to create this app, I wanted people to be able to work with a team. And in order to be able to work with a team, um, somebody actually has to create that team. Now, let me show you actually a different view. So before I created this Mira file, I created this file. Now, I created this file just before I started working with ChatGPT. Now, why is this one useful? In fact, before I created this one, let me show you another document. You see, so the thing is, when you start to make iterations, when you start to design a piece of software, it's going to take a couple of tries to really nail down what the features are going to look like. All right, so let's start with my computer science tutor. And I started asking her questions like, do you know how to design software? She said, yes. Do you know how to code? Yes. Do you know how to use AI tools? No. Okay, so if you don't know how to use AI tools, I don't know if I'm going to be able to work with you. Anyway, so I started creating this thing called Arrowhead. Now, you might recognize that this basic design, it comes from our good friend Notebook LM. So when you go to Notebook, it's a really nice looking interface. You have the logo here at the top. You have your settings. You have your profile picture. Welcome to Notebook LM. And then you have My Notebooks. You can create something new. I really like the way that looked. And so that's what inspired this first, where you can see Welcome to Arrowhead Projects. I like the word Arrowhead because it's like it captures the essence of the concept. Just like in Tom's book, Create Crucial Insight, he created something called direct outcomes checklists. So he created a series of checklists which will help you directly march toward objectives. And marching toward objectives, it's similar to the idea of arrowhead. An arrowhead is when you're pointing at an objective, and then you pull back, and then you let go, and the arrow flies through the air, and boom, it hits the target. So that's the idea behind the concept of arrowhead. And here we go. Here's my projects. So you could create a new project. In the next screen, you're going to see something like this, where you have the right side and then you have the left side. The right side, you can see some really simple questions. What's the purpose of the project? What do you hope to achieve? What market are you competing in? What are some important characteristics of your customers? And how are you going to win? In this edition, I use the words vision and strategy, and then later I removed the word strategy. I think that strategy is a very misunderstood word, and I think that it's just too much. Vision, I think, is good enough. Like, what's the vision? So, a vision, you could say it means purpose. Another question is, what's the difference between the word purpose and hope to achieve? What's the purpose of the project? What do you hope to achieve? It could be the same question. It could be a different question. Sometimes it's good to ask the same question in two different ways because people will understand these questions differently. Now, I'm not trying to say that your answer is correct or that my answer is correct. All I'm saying is that when people start to use this application, they'll likely give different responses for asking a similar question in different ways. So this is going to get their mind focused on what is going on? What am I vision? If we use the word vision, it's like what is that thing that you see in the future? What is the reality which you would like to that you'd like to come into existence? What market are you competing in? Which means right now there are other competitors in that market who are providing services and products for those customers, which then brings you to the idea of what are some important characteristics of your customers, and then having a clear vision of what you'd like to achieve, who you're competing with, who are the customers. Then hopefully you'll be able to answer the last question, which is how are you going to win? All right, so we're just shaping the project vision. We're trying to get people to clarify what is the vision of this project. All right, now you can see that there's like basically three levels here. At the top level, you have the project vision. Second one is milestone objectives, and then you have something called touch base today. So now you see on the left side of the screen how the left side has now opened up. You see it's like a left right. All right, so there's this arrowhead here, and then there's a plus sign. It wouldn't necessarily be perfectly obvious, completely obvious. See, if you click the title, then what's the question? Is the title going to take you back to the home screen? Probably. So the question is, what happens when you tap the arrowhead or the plus sign? And what's the purpose of tapping one of these things? It's to open up the left side of the screen. So when you open up the left side of the screen, you can see how vision and strategy with this little arrowhead is one line. Then the next line is the milestone, objectives, and scoreboard. I was using this concept of milestone because when you are trying to achieve your vision, it's not going to happen all at the same time or all at one time. You have to use milestones. You have to begin at the beginning and then take steps into the future. Achieve one milestone. For example, if you're climbing up one of these mountains up here, then um, you can't jump to the top. You have to hit the 5 milestone. You have to hit the 10-kilometer milestone. You have to hit the 20-kilometer milestone. You have to hit them, you have to reach them step by step. And then there's a scoreboard, which means like how well are we doing? How close are we to achieving that milestone? So here you go on the right hand side. At this time, I was using the words MS to signify milestone objectives, or no, milestone and scoreboard. And here's the questions. Which objectives would you like to talk about? Sorry, that's singular. Which objective would you like to talk about? What are the steps to accomplish the objective if you were to delegate it to someone else to do? This is a really key question. It came from, actually, it came from Nathana. Just now, I showed you her Mira board. Well, I didn't show you her Mira board, but anyways, I was talking to Nathana, and she is in Brazil, and she does trade with coffee. And she had one of her objectives was to work with a new cooperative. A cooperative, it's a company who collects coffee from a whole bunch of different farms, and then as a collective, they pool their coffee together in order that they can find some bigger buyers. And I said, all right, so what are the steps that you need to accomplish this task? And she was like, she was kind of like stuck. And she had two problems. One is that she's the CEO, the founder of her company, and she's been doing this for 10 years. And she's like, why are you asking me what I think I need to do? But then there's the other side, which is um, like I don't know, I can't, like, what are the steps? That's a good question. So then I rephrased the question to what are the steps to accomplish the objective if you were to delegate it to someone else? And she was like, oh, okay, no problem. So I would tell that person to step one, step two, step three, step four. And she did a really good job in explaining the steps. Then I asked her what additional business services are needed. This is similar. When you ask about what are the steps you need to accomplish the objective, the question is, what is the work that needs to be done? What kinds of work are people going to be doing? And connected with that is you need to have some business services. Business services and work go hand in hand, just like the next two questions. The next question is what skills are necessary to complete the task and what tools are needed. Skills and tools, business services and work, or business services and tasks. Next, who will you need to contact in the process of work? That goes hand in hand with this one. Who will you need to cooperate with to complete the tasks? This is a brainstorming process that will enable you to define all of the different things that are connected to this objective. For example, if it was a milestone that we were like, if we're going to climb this mountain, we're going to go up 5 kilometers, then like how many steps is it going to take? What kinds of shoes are you going to be wearing? What kind of clothing will you be wearing? And what kind of skill? So do you know how to move your one foot in front of the other? Tools? Are you going to use those poles to climb? Um, do you need to contact anybody? Do you need some permission in order to get on the mountain? Is there restrictions on this mountain? And are you going with other people? Are you going to cooperate to be able to climb up that mountain? So you can see how these questions really help you to really clarify how is it that you're going to reach that objective. Once you're done with the brainstorming, then you can make a list of tasks. And within the tasks, you have like assigned, not assigned, in progress, finished. I think also add and edit options is a good option. And then you're going to assign a person and then a date for completion. So, like I said, I was talking to another student and she was saying, well, this is just like Jira. Like, what's the difference? You're creating a list of tasks, you're setting the status, you're assigning a person and a date. And I said, exactly. It's like this is common in all types of management tools. Now, because the scoreboard, once you finish this brainstorming activity, the scoreboard then becomes the most important thing. So you're going to click this button here, and that's going to bring the scoreboard to the top. All right, so let's go to the touch base today. Finally, about a month ago, I was talking with one student, and he was talking about, I don't know, um, Scrum. We were talking about Scrum because I have like an activity that I talk to with students when we are explaining the difference between um, responsible, accountable, um, what are the other ones in the RACI matrix? Informed and consulted. So I have this activity in order to learn about the RACI matrix because I show in the RACI matrix how you in a business you generally have people who are like hands, they do that task, and then you have the brain, the people who think, and then you have the managers. They're the people who have to double check what everybody else is talking about and then make decisions. So that's the eyes, the vision of the organization, and the heart, which is the heart. You could look at it from a perspective of like loving and caring and trying to work with people, but you can also look at it as the technical device which takes the blood through the entire organism. And so in my first lesson, when I teach students, I help students to see that an organization is made up of 7 different roles. And this comes from from the work of Thomas Buchholz. And that those roles can be found within these 3 categories: people who are working with their hands, but then this could also be to create paperwork. It's basically just like producing paperwork, doing the product or service, also managing the database for information. Hands. And then brains, these are coaching, people who coach you, help you to take steps according to some thinking methodologies. And then you have the analysts who look at the data and try to understand data. Then they provide their information to the eyes and the heart who make decisions and then implement it through the organization with infrastructure and people. And then I showed how that in the example of the RACI matrix, where you have a computer coding team who are trying to create some automated testing processes. And so the first thing to do is to select the tool for the automated testing process. And I asked, who is it that selects the tool? Technically, it's the manager who selects the tool, but they delegate that decision-making ability to the hands. So you have the actual testers, maybe the software architect. together, they have a meeting, and the developers are also consulted. So you have a little meeting with the developers being the consultant, the tester, the architect being the responsible and accountable, and then they decide on a tool. Now, when it comes to tool, it means you're using your hand, selecting the tool. You ask somebody who knows how to use tools. Then at the next row, we want to decide what are the workflows in the software that we need to fix first. Let's say that there's a bunch of bugs in the software. So who is it that is going to be deciding on which workflows are we going to fix? So this is about the brain. And in this case, we have the architect because they understand how the software works. And then we have the business analyst because they are in communication with the client. And then there's going to be some communication between what the client wants and then what the architect thinks is actually possible within the software environment and what order to fix those problems. All right, so then we pick the tool with the hands, we pick the workflows with the brain, and then we bring it back to our manager and we decide on the key results that we want to achieve and how long we have to achieve those results. And that is the heart. So there's this one thing called a Scrum Master, and the student had no idea what a Scrum Master was. So I just did a little search on Google, and there was a really nice image that was explaining what a Scrum Master is. In fact, maybe I have it in here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So this was the last piece of the application because you can see a Scrum Master. There's a 15-minute daily Scrum where you talk about, okay, so our sprint goal is today I need help with, I can help with, and then you have a Kanban chart. This was the last step to completing my design. Because as we just talked about, at this level, we have created our objective. And after we created our objective, then we created our scoreboard. Now that we have our scoreboard, you see some task, it might not be able to be done today, and maybe it's not even assigned yet. So this is not a daily process. An objective is not a daily process. An objective are the milestones that we need in order to achieve our vision. And that daily Scrum idea was the last idea which I really needed in order to create some robust idea. So let's say that we click. Again, you can see that there's a right side and a left side. So let's say we click this left side here. So that opens up the left side of the screen. Now suddenly we have the vision and strategy, excuse me, at the top. So if I click this little vision and strategy button, then it would open up our previous questions. And then if we click this top line item, then it's going to open to the right-hand side. And there's a T in here to represent Touchbase item. And the name of the file, we're just going to keep it as the date. So you can see that I designed this page 2 weeks ago. And in this design, we have a touch base today. So what we would do is you can see down here in the history that at the bottom we have the objective, which we created above. Let's say that the next day we click this button called touch base today, which created this line in the history. Then the next day we click this, we added another top line item, which was added to the history, and then another one and another one. Let's say at this point we completed our objective. We completed everything in the scoreboard, or we decided that we wanted to start focusing on a new objective. Maybe there are some other people on the team. So we created a new objective by clicking this plus button here, which on that actual day, let's say it was the 16th or the 15th, let's call it the 15th, the Saturday, 15th of February. Or even the 14th, I guess. Let's say that we finished. Okay, let's say we finished the touch base. We finished the previous objective on Friday the 14th. And then on Friday the 14th, after we finished this bottom objective, we then created a new milestone. On Monday, we started to follow up on what was going on to do our little touch base. And then here we go. So on Tuesday, we click the plus button, which puts the top line item into here. Now, I would say probably if you get a new top line item, probably we also want to add that item to the history at the same time. But anyways, uh, that opens us up to the, so let's say we click this top line item, that brings us over to the right side of the screen. What are you working on? What are you going to do today? What do you need help with? What are some potential sources of assistance? And then here, can we update a status? Meaning, is there a task status in the objective? So if this answer is yes, that means I have to click this item in the history. When I click this item in the history, it'll bring us up to the touch base item. It will appear in this row, and then it'll open up the screen that looks like this one above. And probably I've already clicked the button to switch the bottom and the top. So we'll be looking at the scoreboard, and then here we go. We can change the status. Do we need to add or delete a task? Is there a change to the timeline? Now, also at the time, I wanted to be able to export this data. So I created an export button. As I started to think through and work with ChatGPT, it turned out to be way, way, way more complicated than I thought. And also, like, designing the actual user interface was a really interesting experience. But that's it. That was like really the first really basic design that I had. But that was like, that's a mobile version. So I felt like the mobile version, it wasn't completely clear how everything worked. And so what happened was I jumped into ChatGPT, and I mean, I could show you the project. I think it's in this one, download, cursor download guidance. Yeah, as you can see, look at this. So I could just scroll all the way to the top. Let's just close this so you have a better picture. All right, so I uploaded cursor, just a screenshot of their website. Which cursor should I download? I have a MacBook from, I wonder if it matters if the population knows my serial number. I don't know. Anyway, so I have a pretty powerful MacBook. Can I use my ChatGPT o3 model API inside a cursor? Does it already have access? So here it is. So this was the first time when I used this prompt from this switch dimension from this guy. What's his name? Rob Shocks. And I threw it into G03 Mini, and it's like, yeah. So you can already see that the prompt that we got today is not the same as this prompt, but it's it's pretty similar. Anyway, so the app is called Arrowhead, and it's a new way to create understanding. Anyways, we already went through the whole project just now, so you know what it is. And then it was like, oh, well, we need some clarification. This is intense because once you start trying to create some clarification, that's when I just I uploaded the same image I just showed you, because like now this is really, really basic. There's nothing in the export section. I don't have any of the questions in here. How are you going to set up your teams? How are you going to set up your projects? How are you going to share your teams and projects? Here's the scoreboard. And then other resources. So it's like very, very basic. And at the time, I thought I had made so much progress, but in fact, like it was very little progress, and it created this markup file, but the markup file is like, look at this. So I said, when you compare the markdown to all the data I uploaded and consider original questions, as an experienced product manager, what grade would you give yourself, and how well will the AI coding tool Cursor be able to understand and apply the information you've created? It's like it gave itself an A minus. And then I was like, well, okay, so what do you need to do? Like, what additional questions would you ask, please? And please begin each question with some detailed introductory information based on the data you produce so we can tune your response to an A plus. Please list the questions and I'll answer them in one response. That was not good. Like, there was just too many questions. It was really too much. So you are an experienced project engineer, and I want you to provide a simple MVP that doesn't require advanced features. Also, you want to provide the best user experience for new user. Honestly, what happens when I do this is it's also reinforcing to myself. It's telling me like, oh, how should I be thinking about this project, and how are we going to actually make progress? So yeah, it took some back and forth for a while. I said remove number 3. We got a yes, whatever that yes was. Based on, okay, so after a person signs up. So then I go into more detail about what I thought the app should do. And then, of course, and then even more that I edited their response. But as you can probably guess, at this point, I'm going to start to get tired. Your pre-workout formula or whatever it takes in order to keep pushing. Or there's another way to do this. And it comes from the concept called, if you go to the book called The Hook, this guy from near, I don't know how to say this, but anyways, if we go into this concept called action, let's go. This is some of the material I use when I teach students, and we talk about this question. Like, this is Fogg's motivation model. The question is how to get from no action to action. What happens is, as you start to make decisions and as you start to communicate with ChatGPT, you're going to start to get tired, and if you don't know how to do it, then eventually you're gonna get tired, and your motivation, although your motivation is high, if your ability is low, then you have to figure out how to create a facilitation experience. All right, so I would say that my I didn't need a spark trigger, but eventually you're going to have to manage your ability to facilitate the experience. So how does that work? I would say basically it's here, action, when doing is easier than thinking. See, the first question is, how easy or difficult is it to act? What level of ability is needed? How can you make things more or less difficult? And that's really where we were at this point in ChatGPT. I'm not, there's too many things at one time. Okay, did you add all this to your above description? What's missing? So it was like too many things at the same time, and I was having to read too much, and then I was having to edit too much, and each response was longer than the next, and each time I had to try to figure out how to then, it just got like the energy, it started down. And I thought I was making progress, but I wasn't necessarily making enough project progress. And then I started to realize I had to start to break it down into smaller pieces. I had to start designing each of the features step by step. One prompt. All right, so it's still asking me lots of questions. Can you update the description of the export window based on what you've learned, and then use all of the above to update the markdown? And then can we provide the context for the center right window? So I'm just going back and forth still about trying to create more detail. Then I add the question sets. It provides another markdown version. We talk about like the scoreboard, how to change the status. And I want them to update the markdown. I mean, at this point, I still thought I was getting close to like the end of the process. Look at this. So here are some questions derived from an automated testing perspective aimed to ensure very edge case or workflow. So This comes from my previous prompt. Oh, well, that was me that wrote that? All right, let's read that prompt one more time because it looks like I was the one who wrote that. Below are some questions derived from an automated testing perspective aimed at ensuring every edge case or workflow is clearly defined. So at this point, what I did was I asked ChatGPT to take on the role of automated testing software, and that I needed them to think through these questions. So, like for example, multiple assignments on a scoreboard deletion and editing, renaming. Anyways, when I told it to think from the perspective of automated testing software, it gave me all these questions. Of course, that then gave me a new Markdown file. Use the concept of automated testing software to think through all possible workflows and ask any questions that may have been missed or that may help to make the Markdown more complete for the product team that need to read the document and recreate the app based solely on the description which you have provided in the Markdown. All right, so this is when I was like realizing that maybe ChatGPT could do more than I was expecting, and that I really needed it to be like automated testing software. So I used my own experience telling it to be the automated test. So I'm asking right now, I'm asking, like, you need to be. See, the interesting thing that we were just saying is that when you pick a tool, it's the hands. You're asking the hands to pick the tool. So in this case, I am the hands, right? Because I'm trying to create this document, which is paperwork. So that's in the hands area. When you're creating paperwork, it's hands. Also, it's the service. But the tool, in this case, the automated software, it's a kind of thinking tool, but it's also in the same, it's in the hands category. It's about providing a service. Anyway, so then it just asked me a whole bunch of questions, and it was like, I guess you could see I'm still pretty motivated. I'm still pushing. I'm still answering really, really long inquiries. But at some point, I'm going to start to get tired. All right. So then I ask it to change them. Yeah. So this is it. So I want to send this text to it in an email. So this was the end of day one. And I needed them to put it in a different type of format so I could send it in an email. All right, here it is. So here you go. So Arrowhead is a streamlined project management tool designed to help teams quickly define a clear vision and strategy, set actionable objectives, and conduct focused daily touch-based meetings. With an intuitive pizza dashboard, Arrowhead places essential components, teams, project objectives, and task tracking right at your fingertips to keep your team aligned and productive. And then it goes through all the different aspects of the app, whatever it was that day, because there's been a lot of. So then I was picking things like there's a team administrator. As a team administrator, I want to create a new team and invite members so that they can build a collaborative workspace. As a team administrator, I want to manage user roles and permissions so that my team has appropriate access. As a project leader, I want to define vision and strategy, and then objective manager and touch-based manager. So I had a very clear hierarchy in the system for what permission, like what you could do if you were one of these four different levels, which really makes the software experience quite complex. I reposted this for some reason. I don't remember if this is the same day or if it's the next day. All right, what do you think? Answer your questions and give your best recommendations based on your understanding of the project from the previous Markdown output and research which you've done above. All right, so I'm just asking it to do the work. Proceed. Still, so then it's creating some recommendations. I re-upload these prompts, or sorry, images. I'm still kind of going back and forth and back and forth. Keeping all your responses in mind from the immediate above, rework the following prompts. See, I'm asking it to do it again. I mean, I keep asking you to do the same work. Did you follow the directions exactly? Your output is not in the format as requested. I don't want you to revise the prompt. I want you to follow the prompt with exactness. Seems none of the options capture the image I sent you. It sounds like I'm getting frustrated, right? Let's revisit the UX and UI of the app. You have understanding of all the inputted text above and can see that there are many areas of the bricks that are not fully designed. Can you give me some examples? So then it's like, well, where do you want to start working? Based on the markdown file and previously explained permission inviting people to the team, I need to create a table that shows all the teams and projects and also all the team members and project members with their associated permission levels. What would you do to figure out how to set up the UI of this brick? How many of those can you complete with it without any more of my input, and how can I work with you through the process to get the best outcome? Begin in the most logical way so that the solution from the beginning of the work process make later solutions easier to figure out and so that we don't need to repeat work. Reformat the above data so that we have a list of step-by-step tasks and a list of any business services needed. Then comment on the skills we will need and any additional tools that will help us to get better outcomes. After the list is done, tell me what additional tasks I need to do, if any. If there's nothing for me to do, immediately begin work. So you could see I'm starting to use my own thinking methodology in order to to start doing work. So isn't that crazy, right? So like the exact app that I just designed, I used the thinking methodology which I created, and I want to turn into software in order to manage the chat GPT. That's the whole point, is that this thinking is the actual thinking which I believe is the thinking that people need to have in order to get things done, to make real progress in their life and in their businesses. And so when I finally realized that that's what I needed to do, no, I finally realized that that's what I needed to do in order to get ChatGPT to work for me. So that's pretty powerful when I'm using my own thinking methodology with ChatGPT in order to get to get a better outcome. Proceed. You can see I'm just like proceed, proceed, proceed. Because now it's just working. It gave itself like, can you make up mock-up images? It couldn't do the mock-up images, which I wasn't really happy about because I mean, that's really what you need is at some point you need your AI tool to be able to create mock-up images. And that's what we're talking about. So when we hit the point where I need you to create mock-up images, that's where you need specialized software. That's where you're going to use some kind of AI coding tool because the AI coding tool is specialized to create mock-up images. And there's a couple of different AI coding tools that you can use. Anyways, we're not quite at the point where we're going to jump into an AI coding tool yet. I'm still kind of showing you like how much work it really took to get from like a really basic sketch to then creating this document. And then where did I go from there in order to, can you show me all the details related to the share access brick? Let's remove all references to mobile for this documentation and just focus on the desktop version. And this is where in the markup, it was always talking about there was like a difference between the mobile version and the desktop version. I just felt like it would probably be better to focus on one rather than doing both at the same time. All right, so let's stop using the breakdown format for now. What's the next step? Create a step-by-step plan, fill in as many details as you can from previous conversations, then write what remaining choices need to be made. Create a suggestion after each choice that remains. Still using the markdown. I probably got mad. Does your description now you can see I'm starting to get tired because I'm not actually reading what the chat GPT wrote, and I'm just asking if it matches the images. Does your description match this image? What is the next question? Okay, I think this this is the key where you know that I was exhausted because I could no longer read this huge amount of text. I stopped reading completely. I was just trying to think of ways that I could make it do the work without me actually having to do any work. But it doesn't work that way. So at this point, I said, what is the next question? Let's work step by step, avoid reprint all the data, just be simple and work step by step so we can complete this design task. All right, so then the next question is, does the layout of the scoreboard match your image task field? Okay, what is your preference for handling assigned person in the task in the single test? Do you want to allow multiple people to be assigned or limit it to one person? Answer the question. Next question. What is your preference for entering due dates in the task? Freeform text input. Next question. Should the user's newly added or deleted statuses be immediately reflected for everyone on the team? Next question. Would you like a confirmation step when adding or removing status options? Would you like the ability to reorder status options in the dropdown? See, and this became a much, much better experience because now we're just working with single questions and I could just usually it would give me some potential answer and then I was just like confirming whether I liked their answer or not. And so next question, stop using markdown format. Yes, when the user clicks the text box will have a blue outline. Then I started getting creative and like, man, it was interesting actually because this is the thing. The question is like you don't know what you do not know. And that's where ChatGPT came in and really helped me to get through a lot of aspects of the user interface and the user experience, which I had never thought about. And it helped me go through a step process. It's kind of like painting by numbers. And slowly, this painting by numbers process was like, it was so interesting because it was like, oh, well, did you think about this? And did you think about that? And what would you do here? And what would you do there? And it really, really gave me a rich experience to be able to think through all of these different ideas that I had never considered before. So this is what I started with, which was I was able to use these 9 boxes in order to clarify in my mind what's going on. Like, what does this app really do? And how are we going to move forward with this design process? So that's when I made this Miro. So basically, we create a team. And then once you've created a team, maybe you'd like to share a team. And if you're going to share the team, then probably you're going to want to manage permission. After you create a team, then you're going to want to create a project. After you create a project, then you want to create your project vision. So this is when I started thinking back to Tom's book, Create Crucial Insight. From the perspective of project management, I felt like you couldn't directly jump back into Tom's book because Tom's book is extremely difficult for the vast majority of people to understand. And I've proven that through communicating with 400 people, sharing his ideas with 400 real people from all over the world who have various jobs, mainly management. And most people that's why I created that's why I created the online course because like I needed people to go through this experience in order to if you can't make it through my online course, you're not going to make it through Tom's book. It was like a weeding out process. But with this application, rather than having a weeding out process, I wanted to, well, it wasn't necessarily a weeding out process. I wanted to give people the skills that they would need, the thinking skills, and I wanted to give them all this different knowledge, all this knowledge base in order to understand where do Tom's ideas fit. And if you have this broad range of understanding of all of these different ideas, then when you understand Tom's idea, when you look at Tom's ideas, then you'll have a reasonably good chance of being able to work with those ideas. And the design of this app to some extent is also similar to that idea. So as I showed you already, you could do an objective, and then the objective would then you'd create a scoreboard, and then all right. So then after objective, then you're going to do your touch base. For like 80% of new managers and like 80%, I think a huge percentage of new managers and mid-level managers and even some experienced managers would get a lot of benefit by having this tool because they would be able to go to their team and say, hey guys, let's talk about the vision, the purpose, the hope. What are we trying to do with this objective
Mhm.
or with this project? And then their team could explain, what do I think, and how do I feel? And that's going to achieve buy-in. And then you start to talk about the objective and like, okay, so what's the objective we're trying to achieve? And what are the steps we need to take? And what are the tools we need to have? And what are the skills? And let's have this brainstorming experience so that we all understand like what is going on in this objective and how are we going to work together. And then each day you can have your face-to-face or every day, every couple days, twice a day, 10 times a day, I don't know, however many times you want to meet with your team members. You can ask questions. What are you working on? They can tell you. And what are you going to work on today? Okay. And what do you need help with? And what are some potential sources of assistance? And can we update a status? And do we need to add or delete a task? And is there a change in the timeline? These are the fundamental questions of getting progress. And if your team is willing to communicate with you in these specific 6 questions, then it's very likely that the items on your scoreboard are going to be achieved more quickly and that the tasks will be done with better precision, with better outcomes, which means you're going to be achieving objectives faster. You're going to be achieving more objectives, which means your project is going to get done a lot faster. Now, a lot of the time, the projects that are delegated to you as a mid-level manager and the objectives are told to you. You need to do this. These are the objectives I want you to achieve. It depends on your organization. Sometimes people at the mid-level manager level, they have some autonomy about the objectives that they want to pursue. And in other cases, they're just implementing the ideas that other people tell them to do. So anyways, recording the objective and then going through these touch base experiences each day with your team are going to assure that you're getting really great outcomes. And this is where some of the students I talk to are saying, yeah, well, there's already some software solutions that provide these ideas. Good. That means we're on the right track. Now, when it comes to Tom's ideas, he has 2 checklists which I think are extremely relevant for this type of application. If you go to his book, Create Crucial Insight, and you find this one checklist, it's called State Inventiveness. He has actually more ideas than are written here, but these are the ones that I felt are really useful when you are working with projects. And why is it at the same level as the objectives? It's because in this case, you already know what the objective should be, or somebody told you to do this objective. But what happens when like you don't know what the objective should be, or you're allowed to be more creative, or you want to get some feedback from your team? This is a thinking tool which will help you to communicate with your team better and to figure out how to focus on the objectives which are going to matter more, that will help you get better results in your project and which will influence your vision, maybe influence your vision, but certainly will influence your objectives and will help you to focus on objectives which will enable you to reach that vision faster and be much more effective as a team. So it says consider other objectives. And then another one of Tom's checklists, it's about how to select between different courses of action. I call it resolve a dispute. So what's going on here? The idea is that after you do the brainstorming session and a bunch of people have a bunch of different ideas, then what's the process you have to go through in order to select one of those ideas? And then once you've selected one of those ideas, it becomes a new objective. and then you create a new scoreboard, and then you're working each day toward that objective. And then after you achieve that objective, then you go back down to your consider other objectives, and you create your new objective, and then people decide between different scenarios which objective is the best one to pursue, and then you jump back into the objective, and then you achieve that objective, and then eventually you've completed your project, and then you go back here and create a new project. So it's like it's circular. It's like this is what it takes to complete projects. But the issue is that I mean, this design is much, much more simple than those 9 boxes that I showed you. But we still have the issue of sharing a team. How do you share, and managing permission? So finally, I came to the conclusion that let's, for our MVP, let's just focus on really, really basic. See, because the next step is, how do I learn how to use AI tools in order to create a piece of software? So I created this very, very simplified version. All right, so let's say that I download the app, or I go to the, let's call it a website. It's a website, a mobile version of a website. So I'm looking at the mobile version of the website. I can see add a project. Probably if I clicked add a project, then um, a pop-up window would show up that says sign up. All right, so then they sign up and they return to this screen. If they click the profile button, then it would take them over to the profile screen. And it's like really, really simple. I don't think you could have a more simple profile than email address, change your email address, change your passport or password, log out and delete account. I think that's probably the most simplified version of a profile. There's not even a name. It's just an email address and a password. All right, so from here, you can see project plus project. And then down here, we have project name. All right, so what's happening in here? So I took a lot of the ideas and put it on one screen. So down here, we have the history. And then we have the project name. We have 4 buttons. We have the vision. And then we can throw this stuff to the bottom and then throw this stuff to the top. All right, so what do I do? If I click plus project, it's going to add a name here. It's going to add a P under projects. It's going to add a name. And then what happens is when this is added to the project section, so then the name of the project will show up here. But none of this is going to be populated yet because none of these buttons have been clicked. There's only 2 things you can do on the startup screen. Either you can go over to the profile section, or you can click project. When you click project, then a P will show up under projects with the name. The name corresponds with the name of the project. So then you could click this line. Actually, the way that I had it before was the 3 dots. So you click the 3 dots, and then you can rename the project by clicking the 3 dots. All right, so we're going to click this button. It's going to take us to the next screen. All right, so you can see how I clicked that button. We have one project, and the project name is name. It should say name next to here. And in this case, I have the same history from that other screen I showed you before, but now I changed the letters. So objective, I changed the word milestone. I removed the word milestone. And now we just have objective and scoreboard, touch base, brainstorm, and choose. In this case, the first time that person used this app, they clicked vision, and then it gave them the vision questions. The next round, they clicked the objective button, and then they did the objective questions, and then they had two touch base. They did a touch base on Thursday, and then they also did a touch base on Wednesday. On Friday, I think that they probably had a meeting and they said, listen, we have one objective, but I'm starting to have a feeling like we should start to think about having another objective, creating another scoreboard to get more of the team involved in this project. And rather than me telling you what objective we need to achieve, let's go through a brainstorming session and look at what are potentially the best objectives to pursue. So then after they do the brainstorming meeting, they could have done a choose if there were like a couple of different objectives that they wanted to discuss, like which one might be better to pursue right now. But it looks like they settled on one objective because then on the same or next day, they clicked objective and then they created a new objective. And then the next one in the history is a touch base item. All right, so there's one thing that's missing is we don't know if the touch base item on Monday is related to this objective or if it's related to this objective. So this is a hierarchy issue, which was really important in my last, like in an earlier version of this app, because in the earlier version of the app, there was a print function. You could print things. And when you're printing something, it means that you need to have the hierarchy because there's going to be an order of things on the page. In this case, maybe we don't have to worry about the hierarchy because of the naming convention. So rather than using the word objective, we could call it, let's say it's cursor, because right now we're trying to use cursor. Okay, more specific, because maybe the project is cursor. All right, so startup. So how do you create a project on Cursor? So let's say it's create a project on Cursor, and then let's say this one down here, it's download. No, this one down here is using ChatGPT to create the project document. All right, so you could call this one ChatGPT project document, and then the next day it could be ChatGPT project document. ChatGPT. You could use the same name for the touch base items related to that objective. And so on the left-hand side, we know that this is the objective, or we know that these are the touch base items for, whatever the name is for that specific objective. The touch base could be the same. And then maybe with this B, we decided to focus on how do you set up a project on Cursor. And then the objective is setting up a project on Cursor. And then we did a touch base today to find out what's going on with setting up the project on Cursor. In that case, we could remove the idea of hierarchy just by focusing on a naming convention. And then the question is, what are we going to use these three dots to be able to export? And if we're going to export, then what does it mean? Are we going to export only, for example, let's say that I click vision, the three dots next to vision, then is it just going to export this page here in an email format or in a PDF file or something like that? Or is it possible for me to click export and then suddenly there's like a box next to each of these, and then I can click all the ones that I want to put into the export file? And then there's another question is like, see these things here? Let's say that this objective is down here, and then we created a new objective, and then on the next day when we did the touch up, we just realized, okay, this objective, it's not so important right now. So then we could just click this one and then up, and put this objective back up to the top. So there's some questions here around how to create a hierarchy, and then also how do you move objectives up and down and why you would do that. I think currently the way that I'm thinking about it right now is the most simple way. And for the MVP, I think it's fine. Then after I start using it myself with my students, then I can start to think about how I might want to make some changes. Anyways, you already have seen the objective screen. So again, what would happen is I would click that objective, and then when I click that objective, then this line here would appear. And then I would click the arrow, which would push me onto this screen. So there's two ways to do that. One is if I just click objective, and then it automatically pushes me over to this screen. and then also a line is added here, I think it's probably better if I just click plus objective and then it, I don't know. So that's a question. Does it leave me on this screen and then I have to click the arrow to get over here? Or do I click plus objective? It takes me directly over here. I fill out the objective and then probably I'm going to click this button because I want to bring the scoreboard to the top. And then after we fill out the scoreboard, then we're going to click the button here to go back to the project screen. Anyways, I got the next screen. I already showed you the touch base. So it's the same idea. So I would click touch base. Touch base would be added to this line. And then the question is, when I click touch base, does it push me directly to the screen, or does it add a line here and then I have to click the arrow to go across? Probably it's better if I click the touch base and then it adds a line and then I have to click the over button. Anyways, the other two boxes for brainstorm and choose, it's the same format. You click brainstorm, it gives you a set of questions. You click choose, it gives you a set of questions. But as you can see, I now have like a much more simplified version of the app. This is the MVP. And so that brings us back to our 3 model, where we're going to go into PRD Creation Assistant. Based on this new mockup, then I need to answer these questions. And after we're done with these questions, we'll have a PDR, a product requirement document. And then once we have the product required document, we're going to jump into Cursor. So there you go. That's been my experience developing this piece of software. So there you go. An hour and 20 minutes to talk you through the last couple months as I've settled in on this idea for the product, and then have designed a basic the basic screens for this app. And now we are going to figure out how to start working with AI software tools. Thank you for joining me here on Space Between Ideas, and we'll catch you next time.